where kind of there's a lock because the canal boats all go through there, and then it's heading. It's basically, it looks like a river, but it is a canal heading up into. Actually, hang on. No, let me just say that bit again because I think I might have got it wrong.
Indeed, my guest today is the wonderful Josie Standbrook from the equally wonderful organisation Action for Happiness. You definitely should check out their website, and you should definitely check out Josie's own podcast that she's done for them, which is absolutely magic. Talking to Josie, as I think you'll hear, she's just a really easy person to talk to, very open-minded, very warm, very interesting, very interested in the world around her. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to her, and I hope you'll find this episode a pleasure to listen to. So let's hear from Josie and her wonders of the world.
I want to say, I think it was about 5 years ago when I was living in Surrey, I was feeling a bit flat, and a friend of mine recommended the Action for Happiness Exploring What Matters course, which is an 8-week face-to-face course facilitated by a couple of people with a group of people just discussing all sorts of different topics and themes that might help improve mood and happiness levels. So I signed up for one of those in Kingston, did the course, loved it, and then became connected with Mark Williamson, Dr. Mark Williamson, in fact, who founded Action for Happiness, because that was his local group. And then I started going to the get-together, which he arranged in the local pub after the course had finished. And then I think, first of all, I was doing the moderating for their social media, and then I stopped doing that. And it came to me one day, and I thought, Action for Happiness needs a podcast to go alongside the monthly calendars, and I just volunteered to give it a go, really.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought up the podcast. I love the podcast. I'm going to try and describe it. You tell me if I've done it justice. It's about between 5 and 10 minutes long each month, and it just gives you a little snapshot of the daily challenges that Action for Happiness promote. So each day they send out a little challenge for you to do, and so it catches some of those, and then it also pulls together some words from people who are part of the Action for Happiness community and things that they've been up to, and then involves you sharing some of your own thoughts and feelings throughout of the month. Does that sound fair? Yeah,
that's a good encapsulation of it, I think.
What I like about it is it's really short, and there's nothing you can't not like about it, if that makes sense. It's just a really nice little dose of positivity.
Thank you.
Once a month. So yeah, I've been I think when I discovered it now, but yeah, I've been enjoying that for a good few months now. Yeah, definitely.
That's great. Thank you. Yes, it's really nice to hear you say that, because as I create it and I just kind of go on, it's entirely intuitively led. I don't do huge amounts of research. I just sort of look at the calendar and just kind of do it intuitively. And then I just never know whether it will resonate with someone. So the fact that you listen to it and have enjoyed it and benefited from it, that's the whole point, I suppose. So that's great. I'm glad.
Good. So I suppose, is there somebody out there listening and they're not as happy as they want to be? How would you sell Action for Happiness to them? What would be your argument, and say, you need to check out this website, or, check out this podcast, get involved? Because there's loads of things out there, isn't there, that people are saying, this will make you happy, or this will make you feel better. Yeah. I mean, I really like Action for Happiness as a message, but how would you sum it up?
I would say that I love Action for Happiness because it is backed by stacks and stacks of science. Every action that the organisation Action for Happiness encourages is based upon scientific studies that have found that taking that specific action can help contribute to happiness levels. And I really like, taking action that is kind of proven to be of benefit, rather than just flailing around, grabbing at whatever. And especially because I think a lot of solutions nowadays, and resources can be expensive or can require large investments of time, not necessarily easily accessible to everyone. Action for Happiness, the website, is, obviously the first port of call. And within that, they've got lots of YouTube talks, all of which are available free. There's the podcast, which of course is free too. And then there's the app, which, like you mentioned, you just get sent a daily nudge of something you could have a go at that day that might help boost your mood. And the feedback that people give from all over the world to about their experiences of these actions is so humbling, and you can just tell that it makes a massive difference to a lot of people, and it is really accessible no matter how old you are, how much money you've got, whatever. It's a great resource for everybody. And then there's a book actually that goes along with it, which is 10 Keys to Happier Living, which is an Action for Happiness sort of guide book, I guess, and I cannot recommend it enough. It's fantastic. It's got lots of exercises in to just help keep that positive thinking, positive living going. Yeah, it's really good.
Nice. Yeah, the challenges are always really, like you said, they're really accessible, aren't they? There's not a single one that I've read and thought, oh, this person would struggle to do that, or this person would struggle to do that. So
absolutely.
Although today's is say hello to a neighbour. I mean, that's a perfect little challenge for Action for Happiness. It's like a tangible thing that you can do that might just be a small little nice thing. It might turn out to be a bigger, better thing. But it's not something too abstract or too complex. It's just a little gesture. And I guess that's where the science comes, isn't it? It's just it shows that those little gestures add up to making yourself more happy. I can't actually do today's, obviously, because I'm self-isolating, aren't I? But there you go. Right. So
you could shout out a window.
I could do it. Where I live, that might attract quite a lot of unwanted attention. I'll think about it. I like the fact that you're not letting me cop out, though. That's good.
There's always a way. There's always a way.
Indeed, yeah. I'll think of something. Okay, right. Well, with that great little starter, I feel like that's a perfect warm-up for our 7 choices. We'll start off. We're going to do a lucky dip then, Josie.
Yeah, great. Let's do it.
So first one, I think this is probably a good place to start. So the first one is your place. So tell us a little bit about the place that you chose today.
So if I could only have one place, or a place that to me is a wonder within my world, is the Way navigation. So it's actually a very specific spot on the Way and Arun Canal in Guildford in Surrey, which is where I lived until quite recently. And it's a specific spot. It's the junction between the canal and the River Way. And it's a great spot for what I would call wild swimming. Now, I'm sure that wild swimming purists would be like, no, you need something with like a waterfall. There needs to be a dangerous element and a rushing current and this kind of thing. But this is as close to wild swimming as I can get. And I went there throughout last summer with my friends, different people each time. And we would just get into the water, usually in the evening after work, and swim together up the River Way side. And we'd be chatting to people walking along the footpath there. And it was just such a beautiful way to end the day. The sun would quite often be setting in the distance, and it just felt like bliss, I guess.
That is superb. You know what? So for anyone who doesn't know what Way navigation looks like, which was me, I Googled it, and I'm going to describe it as the scene from Rosie and Jim. Do you remember that program?
Yes, exactly.
And so I was just so intrigued. I was thinking, I cannot wait to hear what Josie's been doing in this place to make it her favourite place. It did not occur to me that you've been swimming in it, and I think swimming not in a swimming pool is just one of the coolest things you can ever do, is it? So
it's lovely. It feels so nice to be back in nature doing that,
Yeah. So how far are you swimming on these like swimming escapades?
We'd swim for about, it depends on how cold we got, to be honest. Because when we're like shivering and our lips had gone blue, it was definitely time to get out. But I would say we were usually swimming for about half an hour, 15 minutes in one direction, 15 minutes on the way back. And you'd have paddle boarders going past, you'd have a bit of a chat with them, canal boats going past, bit of a chat with them. Obviously, you've got to be very careful near a canal boat. In fact, as a disclaimer, I don't think you're supposed to be swimming at all when there are canal boats, but it's very wide.
Okay.
But yeah, we'd talk to people walking past on the footpath. Quite often people would say, oh, I wish I was doing that. And we'd be like, just come in. But they never did.
Oh, spontaneous. That would be amazing, wouldn't it?
I know, just like, strip down to your underwear and jump in. And quite often there'd be ducks and geese. I was always a bit scared of the geese.
Oh yeah, geese. You don't want to mess with an angry goose.
Absolutely.
Goose.
Yes. I always stay away from them. But it was like being in Wind in the Willows or something. That's what it felt like for me. And at the end of a day working, it just felt like the most amazing. It was kind of a sublime meditative activity, one of those things that's good for, there aren't many of them, but they feel good for, actually there probably are, it's just I don't do that many of them. It's good for mind, body and soul. It felt like it was good for all three. It was good for my mind because it was meditative, it was good for my body because it was exercise, and it was good for my soul because it was lovely to have this connection with the planet and this connection with whoever I was with. Yeah, I can't recommend it highly enough.
No, I don't think we could have got off to a better start, Josie. Like if you go swimming, like I said, swimming outdoors somewhere, as long as you don't have a sort of near-death experience, you will definitely feel better afterwards, won't you? Like it is, the moment where your head goes underwater.
Yeah, and that's 100%. That's what I would say is I always go with someone else, because even if you're a competent swimmer, I would always say, always go with someone else, with somewhere there is no current and somewhere you can always touch the bottom. That's like my rules kind of thing. Even though I can swim well, as if I abide by those things, then I know I can stay safe and enjoy the experience fully.
I feel like you've sold the experience and satisfied the lawyers with that little bit of safety advice at the end, Josie. So I really appreciate that. Okay, right, let's move on to choice number 2 then. So here we go. Your second choice is your book, which is Man's Search for Meaning. I think it's come out in 1946. Now, this is a book that I had heard about, been meaning to read for a while, but never actually read. So I'm really glad that you chose it. Tell us why you chose this book.
Well, I have had this book recommended to me many times. It's written by Viktor Frankl, who was a doctor, and he was kept in a number of concentration camps during the Second World War, and this is his book about his experience of that and the experience of others who he witnessed in the camp. And it's a very short book. It's like, I'm just having a quick look at it now. I mean, it's like 100 pages. I think it's about 100 pages, not much more. So you can read it so quickly. And it's the most fascinating insight into a world that, I'm so fortunate to say that I have never experienced anything like being kept in a concentration camp. And Viktor Frankl really takes the reader into that world, but in a really sort of gentle way that it's really just through a series of anecdotes. He tells a series of anecdotes about concentration camp life, the little details, and then it's kind of overarched by this amazing message of the awesome strength of the human spirit.
Yeah, one of the things that it does really well, that you sort of touched on, is it does open the door to that world in a way that accessible is probably the wrong way of describing it, but in a way that makes it feel doable. Maybe it shouldn't be doable, but I think one of the reasons I've been a bit apprehensive about reading the book before is I'm not a massive fan of reading books or watching films that just show me loads of horror if I don't feel like something good is coming out of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But because like maybe it's just the way he just strings together the anecdotes and breaks it down, it didn't feel sort of gratuitous to me. It felt just, it just felt like I'm going to show you what this experience was like. And I found that very doable. And so from that point of view, that side of the book I enjoyed a lot more than I thought I was going to enjoy. It again, is probably not the right word either, but you know what I mean?
Was there part of the book that you didn't enjoy?
So no, I wouldn't say there's none of it I didn't enjoy. I think what I found harder to do, and this is what I was going to sort of ask you about, is like I said, in terms of this is an interesting book about concentration camps and what that experience was like, that it sort of ticked that box for me perfectly. I found it a little bit more difficult to know what I would take away from that applied to me sitting in my insanely comfortable life. Does that make sense? So I suppose talk to me a little bit more about what tangible impact do you think the book has had on you as a person or the way that you live your life?
I think for me, what it does give me is the message of hope is so powerful, because sometimes I, as someone who can be prone to depression and negative thinking and pessimism, and has historically, when I had suicidal ideation when I was younger, and I did try to take my own life when I was younger. To read about what people can endure and still keep the hope sort of made me feel like if that's possible for them, it must be possible for me as well. It must be. It can't just be, because they're suffering so much more in an external world. My suffering was mainly internal, but it was almost like what he talks about is how those who had a rich inner life, a rich kind of spiritual life, or just a rich inner world, were able to withstand the immense external suffering more easily, because they had a kind of sanctuary within. And I think it showed me how critical it is to have to create a sanctuary within.
Yeah, I get that. I think there's definitely a real power in that. And when you talk about it, I can hear how it resonates with you. Does that make sense? One of the things that I sort of find a bit interesting, and I find that the same thing with Action for Happiness really, is there's something really sort of liberating and empowering about the concept that if you have this rich inner world and this sense of meaning, you can withstand certain things, or you have a certain resilience. One of the things that I find it difficult to do, though, is to hold that sort of thought in my mind, which, like I said, is an empowering one for whether it be for me or people around me, my children, or anybody. But without, there's sort of a logical follow-on thought from that, which is if you say to somebody, if you've got that, then you will be resilient, or you will be, you'll be, mentally and emotionally be better off. That if somebody isn't in a good place, that message could either be empowering or could be giving them responsibility for their own well-being, their own feeling. And it might sound like you're saying, oh, well, if you had more meaning, you wouldn't be feeling like this, which is probably true, but it's a hard thing to say to somebody when they're struggling. Do you get what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do get what you're saying. And especially I think the difficulty as well with that is once you're in it, like if someone comes to me when I'm right in it, in inverted commas, like really at a low ebb, and someone comes to me and says, look, just get some meaning and, just cultivate a rich inner life. I would be that is completely out of reach at that stage. I can barely even get dressed, let alone that. So I think what it shows me is how on a daily basis, and essentially, I suppose, as a disclaimer, I would say starting from when a person is feeling at their best or is feeling able to, how important on a daily basis it is to keep topping up the tank in some small way. And I think this can be, I guess we're talking about two different things here. I'm talking about meaning on one side, and I'm talking about a spiritual life. So I would say that if I invest in whatever I believe the meaning is of my life, and of course it's totally totally subjective. So whatever that I believe the meaning is of my life, would not necessarily be the same for someone else. But say I believe that the meaning of my life is to be happy and to inspire other people to be happy, then if I can just in some small way take an action towards that. So if it means doing something that I find joyful, or connecting with someone and, giving them something, like giving them a gift, giving them a compliment, reaching out to them, showing support, affirming them on something they do, whatever, to try and spread that happiness. If I can do something small in that direction every day, then I'm topping up the meaning tank each day, and it could potentially prevent me falling to those depths because I'm keeping that sense of meaning as a priority each day. Simultaneously, it's very important, I think, to cultivate a rich spiritual life, and that again is subjective. For me, that might be 5 minutes of prayer and meditation a day. Other people, it might be walking in nature or whatever. And if I can try my best to invest in that as well, it's just keeping me buoyant and resilient. So hopefully I won't fall so far next time. That's what I see. Or when I do fall down next time, I've got that I'm aware that is how I like to live my life, and it can kind of hopefully pull me back quicker. I don't know if any of that makes sense, but
it's actually really bizarrely makes loads of sense in that if you haven't read the book, people should go and read it. And then it's really, when you're listening to you talk, it's really bizarre. You can actually hear how a book about a bloke who survived a concentration camp 70 years ago, or whatever it is, how that makes sense in your normal life. It's actually quite bizarre listening to it. But yeah, definitely. Listen, I don't know if the book worked for me personally as well as it sounded like it worked for you, but I definitely think it's a really good book, and I definitely think anybody who read it would take interesting things from it. You couldn't read it and miss, if that makes sense.
No.
Okay, we need to keep moving on. Your next choice, so I think this one was probably my favourite, and this was your film. I was slightly, when I watched it, I loved it. I still thought it was slightly not a predictable choice. So your film is the 2007 film Atonement. So yeah, what's the reason that you picked that as your one of the world, Josie?
Well, this film, which is directed by Joe Wright, this is the only film that I have ever gone to see at the cinema, come out of the cinema, bought another ticket and gone back in to see.
I love that.
Again, it honestly, it really struck a chord with me. I hadn't read the book. It's based on an excellent novel by Ian McEwan of the same name, and I hadn't read the book, even though I think it probably was one of the texts in my English degree. But I mean, that just pretty much shows. So you've
read the Wikipedia summary.
Exactly. I asked a friend to explain what happened.
Yeah.
And
I'll wait for the film, and then I'll see it twice. That'll be fine.
Exactly. So I watched the film, and it completely blew my mind. For me, it's not like this film makes me super, super happy, and it's not the best film in the world. There are lots of better films, but it's got it's got the most amazing, first of all, it's got the most fantastic cast. It's got people like actors like Saoirse Ronan, Benedict Cumberbatch, and Juno Temple before they were famous. So in their kind of like breakout roles, and every single member of the cast is excellent.
Yeah, I know Keira Knightley divides opinion, didn't she? I thought she was outstanding in this. Like,
yeah,
I can understand. I sort of thought, wow, that's where the fuss comes from. Like,
the casting is fantastic. Whoever did that, they just got everyone spot on. And you're right, you know. And it's just like, for me, it's everything. I think the fact that it's based on such an amazing book. So the narrative, I feel like at the beginning of that film, you have no idea where it's going to go. At the beginning of that story, it's so original. You have no comprehension of what could happen, because I've never seen anything like that before. And it's, you know, the sound editing, the way the editing of the music is edited into the typewriter, the costumes are great. You know, Keira Knightley in that emerald color dress, I think, is really very powerful image. She just looks fantastic. And really all the mise en scène, so the locations and the cinematography, and, you know, when it's over in France and stuff, some of those visuals are really amazing in the, you know, wartime hospital and all the rest of it. And also fundamentally, it's got the best shot in any film ever made, as far as I'm concerned, which is on Dunkirk
Beach. Yeah,
5-minute long tracking shot. I don't know if you remember it, but really everyone, I think, should watch the film simply for that shot, to have an understanding of the choreography that must have been involved in that 5-minute non-stop tracking shot. Is, I mean, it's absolutely mind-blowing, because all the different bits of action, and I don't want to, you know, spoil anything, but there's lots of action happening as they're kind of walking across this beach. And it's just, yeah, I mean, I think the film as a whole, and then moments like that, just had me like really, really breathtaking, genuinely breathtaking. And so that's why, you know, it's got so much for me. It's also a very moving story. And so it's like, it's not like I finish it and I go, oh, I'm so happy, but I leave it feeling like I have just watched 2 hours of pure art.
Yeah, I get that totally. I've got to ask you, what did you think of? So we're gonna have to just, it's gonna be spoilers all over the place here. But what did you think of, you know, Bryony, the little girl who basically she tells a lie at the start, doesn't she? Which goes on to have massively bad consequences for the main characters, and then the twist is at the end she has revealed this lie. She's now an old lady and she's an author. And she's written a book about the thing. And then in a TV interview, she basically admits that she told this lie. What did you think about that character, especially in that end bit where she's the older woman being interviewed? What did you think about her?
I think, I mean, I guess, you know, the word atonement is literally to atone for one's sins, is to try to make up for them, isn't it? To try to make amends for what has been done. And the book, and then that's what she's doing. You know, she's dying. This is all that she is able to do to make up for what she did, that I guess she's just kind of pushed to the back of her mind, because it's almost like what she did was so terrible. So I think, I don't sort of hate her or anything. I just think that she just got carried away, and then it had all gone too far too fast, and there was nothing that could be done. So
you're obviously just a far nicer, more forgiving person than me. I was furious. I was furious. Not for the lie that she told when she was 13, but the fact that she's then continued that. And to us, even after Robbie has died, I just thought, obviously I'm maybe just getting way too involved here, but he's got parents, hasn't he? He would have had a whole group of people in that community And for her, so then she's, you know, for a 13-year-old to tell a lie is one thing. For an adult to keep up that lie and then to write a book, and at the end, I just wasn't satisfied with that. I wanted to get in there and give her a good grilling and say that's just not okay, you know, not good enough. But anyway,
his life was his mum, and she, I guess, yes, when you go down your road, she will have presumably died never having had her son's name cleared. Yeah, which I guess, yeah, I hadn't really thought of that.
I mean, it didn't take away from the film. It just made me that old woman at the end. I just like, I know, I'm not standing for that.
And you know what? Isn't that so interesting? Because I guess as well, like that's what I love about a film or a book or anything. Like I'd never even thought about that aspect. And you're absolutely right. It's not just the tragedy of, you know, it's not all okay just because they die. Because the truth still should have been revealed, but it's a story of the damage done by extreme cowardice, isn't it? Really, that's a really good way of summing it up. Definitely, yeah, definitely. And the girl who plays Barney when she's 13, she's phenomenal, isn't she? Absolutely phenomenal piece of acting. Right, okay, let's keep moving on. Your next choice is your album. So we've done your book, your film, and your album here. Your album, which is by the Travelling Wilburys. I listened to this and I straight away thought, this is music that comes with nostalgia. Like it sounds nostalgic, even if you've never listened to it before. So am I right about that? Or is this come with a load of memories? I would say this album, so it's by a band called the Travelling Wilburys, and I think it's called Travelling Wilburys Volume 1. And the Travelling Wilburys are essentially, you know, people talk about super groups. I can't really think of any group as a super group except this one, because the super nature of them is like superhuman.
It's off the charts, isn't it?
Yeah. I can't even imagine getting a bunch of musical individuals together like this again. So we've got Bob Dylan, George Harrison, Jeff Lynne from ELO, Roy Orbison, and Tom Petty from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, all kind of collaborating to create this band and this album. And I think when we first had a CD player, when in the 80s, I guess late 80s, I guess it would have been. My dad worked at a department store, and he got given or somehow got a CD player, and we got the Michael Jackson Bad album, and that got played a lot. And then this was the second album I think that we got, and it got played a lot in our house, and my dad really loved Roy Orbison and Tom Petty, and I just think that it's like the combined forces of such musical elite. When it all kind of comes together, it's not like the music is, again, it's not the best music necessarily in the world, but you can really hear the combined power that everyone brings to it. Like it just feels like to have those kind of creative talents all working together just creates, it's just like a feeling. There's like a vibe to this album that kind of, I think nostalgic is a really good word. And I think there's a sort of tragic element, because Roy Orbison died just like within a very short time after the album was created. And so then for the video for one of the singles, Handle with Care, is like a tribute to him. And I think when I listened to it, because my dad died when I was 21, which is a long time ago now. And when I hear this album now, I feel close. It takes me back to my childhood and that time with my dad. And I feel by enjoying that same music that he enjoyed, I feel like that connection, I suppose, to family. And I just think it's a beautiful, for me, it's like a moment in time musically, like in, you know, the music world, and for me personally.
Yeah, I mean, well, thanks for sharing that. I suppose it sounds like the music maybe I'm going to be wide of the mark here. In that specific instance, it sounds like the music is like a positive way of remembering a sad thing, or somebody in your dad. Does that sound about right? I suppose thinking about somebody that you've loved and lost is very painful, but if there's a way that you could do that has a bit of warmth, or
totally
takes the sting out of that, I suppose. Is that right?
Yes, and I think also because when I think of it's strange. It's almost like it's not like my dad was musical at all, but I almost, when I hear them, especially because most of Travelling Wilburys have died now, it's like, this is just so this is so kind of off on a tangent, but it's like when I listen to it, what I feel like I'm listening to is a glimpse of like a heaven of men of a certain era, and I feel like my dad's there with them.
Yeah.
And I just, he's just in, like, I hear their music and I imagine he's just sitting with them.
Yeah. You know what? If you watch the Travelling Wilburys videos, that just makes so much sense. It's nowhere near as weird as it sounds. Like I could, my dad could probably be in the background. He's actually not dead, but he would definitely be the next one to pull up a chair. I totally get what you're saying. Yeah, definitely. And Roy Orbison's big in our house, and one of the things I really like about it, which is in a slightly similar vein, is Roy Orbison's, his own music is, I find it incredibly sad. And on this album, he just sounds like he's having so much fun.
Yeah.
Which again is that sort of contrast of sadness and happiness at the same time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Sweet. That's great. Do you still listen to it regularly, or is it something you only listen to sparingly?
I don't listen to it super regularly. We have it at my mum's house, and my mum, it's nice because my mum has also introduced it to my stepdads, who she married after my dad died. So he didn't know it. So he now has a real love of it, and he listens to it in his car. So it's like we're kind of, Mum and I are on a mission to
convert the world.
The word of the Travelling Wilburys album.
Super. Well, I would say definitely a good listen. Okay, your next choice I massively misunderstood because it's your possession. And it's a weighted blanket. And my life is a constant fight against the cold. I've got really bad circulation. So I was so excited. I was like, there's a new blanket out there that will keep me even warmer than the one I've already got. But that's not what a weighted blanket is it? So explain to everybody what a weighted blanket is and what it does.
Well, a weighted blanket it's kind of in the name. It is essentially, mine is a very soft blanket that within has, I can't remember what the weight of mine is, maybe it's about 2 kilos. So it has an evenly distributed throughout the surface area of this, mine's a kind of chenille fabric, is distributed 2 kilos in weight. And the way I came across it is there were kids who I was looking after who had some of them had like emotional difficulties or difficulty relaxing, maybe a bit of like ADHD or something like that in there. When they go to bed, they would have these weighted blankets, and it would really, really help them relax and fall asleep. And I've had sleep problems, ranging from like mega insomnia to just really broken sleep for and so I thought, I'll try this, and because I could see how well it worked for them. And then I read a few things, and adults seem to benefit just as much from it. And I don't use it all the time because actually, even though it's not heated, to be honest, I find it gets very hot. Like I couldn't use one in summer, but in winter and when I go camping, it has exactly the same effect. Basically, it helps relax the nervous system, the feeling of it's a bit like when you get a baby, and they don't do it so much now, but back in the day you used to really wrap a baby up tight, like in swaddling, to help them relax and go off to sleep. And it works in exactly the same way now. Your body, that having this weight, feeling like sort of tightly held, I suppose, helps relax the nervous system. And so I absolutely love mine. I don't use it all the time, but like I say, when I in winter and when I'm camping, it just feels like, yeah, it just really helps me kind of get over those sleep things.
I feel like I get quite claustrophobic in that, but
I have to be honest, it's odd, but all I don't like, as a disclaimer, I'm not making any statement about gender equality, inequality, or anything like that. But all the men that I've come across who I've said, oh, have a go. Like I've said, you know, have a go of my way to make it. They're all just like, I'm being suffocated. I don't know why. Whereas the women I know are like, oh, this is so nice. I think there's something like men don't like to feel constricted. Whereas women are like, oh, just relax me.
yeah.
All the men I know have tried it have been like, absolutely not, get it off me. So,
Yeah, I mean, like if you put me in a tight sleeping bag, I'd start losing my mind. Or kayak, and my legs start going insane in the kayak. So yeah, maybe it's not for me. But
no.
I still like the I like the fact that you just pick something that just makes life a little bit more comfortable and nice. That's definitely a good thing. Okay, we're down to your last two then. So here we go. Okay, this one, I'm really glad this one's stayed towards the end, because so my rule for this is that no matter what the wonder is, I have to embrace it fully and be just, you know, totally open to the idea of loving it. And when I saw this choice, Josie, you tested that beyond breaking point, I would say.
Thank you. I love that I did that, and I totally get it. Very polarizing choice, this one.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So it's your person. Tell us about this person before I sort of, you know, chomp my own tongue off. Go for it.
So this person is a very, very polarizing personality, and I have to be honest, for 10 years at least, I really actively did not like this person.
Interesting. Okay, so there's hope for me yet. Keep going.
And then I sort of discovered them again a few years ago, and now that I have embraced them, I'm really enjoying their work. So the person I'm talking about is Russell Brand, who was at one point, he was a TV presenter and a stand-up comedian, and I just thought I didn't like his look, I didn't like his comedy, I just didn't like him. He just had I didn't even give him any thought. I just thought he was a bit of an idiot. And then I think it was when, I'm trying to remember when I started to get interested in him. I think it was maybe when he was perhaps getting involved, he had this YouTube channel called The Trues, and I think which was a few years ago, which I think his idea behind that was that he wanted to do the true news, and or his interpretation of the true news, and I loved that. And then off the back of that, I kind of got a bit more into him, and now I watch his YouTube videos a lot. I recently went to see him live. I've seen him live before as well. And his message really, really resonates with me. Or not even his message, yes, but also his style. That communion of spirituality, psychology, philosophy, and comedy is right up my street. And now, why do you hate him?
Okay.
Everyone hates him.
First things first. So I started off in the wrong place. So I started off with his current YouTube programs, or programs is the wrong word. That shows how old-fashioned I am. His current YouTube things that he does, and I was just like, this is basically the exact opposite of Josie's podcast. So if your podcast is called Action for Happiness, I would describe his podcast or his YouTube channel as In Action for Grumpiness. Like, all he's doing is telling me about loads of things that I should be angry about or annoyed about. And I just thought, what a shame. Like, what you do is such a great example of somebody promoting not any sort of grandiose idea, but just nice little things that can just make the world a better place, make people happier. And I felt like he's just got this incredible platform. He's got over 4 million followers, hasn't he? And I guess that he has got some things that he thinks you should do, but it felt like on the YouTube thing that I watched, all he was doing was telling me about bad things that other people were doing and nothing to do about it. Do you sort of recognise that at all?
Totally. And I think actually what I do, the aspect where he falls short for me is the call to action is not there enough for me. In all fairness, and I wish he did more of this, on his, like if you're on his mailing list, you get a weekly video where he talks about, he basically is trying to create a community of like-minded people. But his just normal YouTube videos don't do that. And I don't like being given the problem without the solution. The solution for him is, you know, spiritual life, laugh about it, have an awareness, so you know, educate yourself so you know what's going on. But then for me, it's like I want a plan, and I want to be part of that plan. And I feel like that's where he's not delivering. So I need to let him know that.
Yeah, let it be known, Josie. But there is some light at the end of the tunnel. So because I'd just read Viktor Frankl's book and I was all for finding meaning and, you know, being resilient, I kept going, Josie. I did not stop there. I did not stop.
Good for you.
Despite, I was more angry at this point than I was with the elderly lady in Atonement, but I still kept going. And eventually I found something that he'd done that I liked. You'd be very pleased to know.
Oh.
He's done a football podcast called Football is Nice.
Yes.
And on that, he's totally different. He's still Russell Brand.
Yeah.
I think because you could tell he really admires the footballers or sort of loves them in the way that a football fan does.
Yeah.
So it really keeps a lot of his sort of bigger ego in check. And he just talks to these footballers. And I was like, wow, this is brilliant. Like, you've got so much to offer. He's obviously very good at what he does, and he's funny and he's entertaining and he's really interested in them. And I was just like, that's so sad that you've done this really cool football podcast, but then the one that's got 4 million football followers. I want to see that Russell a bit more. Yeah, well, I feel like we found a little bit of common ground, despite me not totally embracing your wonder there. So thanks for bearing with me, Josie. Okay, your last wonder, and this is something that I don't know. I know nothing about this, but I already love it. So it's your memory. And it's probably like a kind of brings us back into a nice little loop from where we started, which is that you've just moved. So tell us about your memory and your last wonder of the world.
Well, my memory is, first thing I think it's important to say is I have a very, very, very poor memory, because I had a very hedonistic 20s. And so my memories are very limited. Regularly, people I know for years say, "Oh, do you remember that?" And I'm like, "No, I've got no idea what you're talking about." So a lot of my memories are gone. But so I don't have a lot of long-term ones. So when I read was looking at what's my favorite memory, I came up with something that was relatively recent, because I just don't have that many from a long time ago. And this was only in October 2021. I was leaving Guildford. I was moving to Bristol, and I was leaving my job at a health food shop in Guildford, which I absolutely loved. I loved the people I worked with so much. And for my leaving do, we were going to my favourite place in Guildford, which is a board games cafe called Unplug and Play. And at Unplug and Play, they have the most phenomenal selection of games, and they know the games really well. Chris and his wife who run it. And you just go in and say, I want something quick, funny, whatever you want. And you can go in and play Dungeons and Dragons for hours and hours at a time, or you can go in and play Hungry Hippos. And so I would go in there regularly with friends, and then I decided to go with all my work colleagues, and we played 3 games over 3 hours. We took our own food from the Korean restaurant next door, because Korean food is my favorite. And yeah, I love Korean food so much. You need a favorite food one on there. 7 Wonders food. I would have honestly come up with, I couldn't limit it to one. But and we all went, and we just had, I can't even remember what games we played. Like I say, my memory's not great, but we laughed so much. It was like such a beautiful note to end on for a wonderful job and a wonderful 18 months with those people. Not that it's like not like I don't see them anymore, but it just to bring us all together in that environment.
Yeah.
Everyone was like squealing and shrieking with laughter. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, you might not know what I mean, but there was a lot of like, no, stop, because I'm going to wet myself type.
Yeah. When your cheeks hurt, when your cheeks actually physically hurt.
Yeah, when you're in pain.
Yeah. So I've got loads of questions. So firstly, how does the joys of board games compare to the hedonism of your 20s, Josie?
The joy of board games. Well, you know what? You know what's so fascinating, and I won't go too deep on this, but essentially, what some people don't realise is that we're all just children in adult bodies, and that never changes. From when we just grow and grow in age, but we're still children in adult bodies. And my experience is the things that we love when we're kids, we still will love some variation on that as we get older. And I absolutely love playing board games when I was a kid. As an only child, I ended up playing a lot of board games on my own.
Super.
Yeah, but I also played a lot of board games with other people, and I loved them. And so for me, this is really just like relighting a spark that's been, kind of burning within me gently throughout my. I didn't realise, and I guess I just looked for extreme fun rather than simple fun.
Yeah.
And simple fun is so precious. And now that I've rediscovered my love of games, I'm like, I'm really, really into them. I mean, not complicated ones, because I can't remember the rules, obviously.
Yeah.
But anything, I mean, all the quick, funny ones, something like Articulate, I just absolutely love.
Well, you're preaching to the converted. I'm a massive board game fan. Obviously, got kids at the moment, so we're all over the board games. Any special board games that you'd recommend?
My big favourites are Unstable Unicorns, which is like a card game rather than a board game. I really love Articulate. If you've got like teams, I think, because you need like an even number, so like 4 people or whatever, 6 people, Articulate is great. There's also a really good game called Muffin Time, which is great.
Muffin Time, okay.
I would say that they're probably my top 3. And if you're with adults, I've had a hilarious evening playing a game called Absolute Balderdash.
Right.
Yeah, so those would be my top suggestions.
Okay. No, it sounds like a bit to be getting on with. I'm going to return the favour. Have you ever played Dixit before?
No.
Check Dixit out. It's amazing.
How do I spell that?
Dixit. It's not funny, but it's super cool. So
okay, great.
That's my little tip. And then board games wise, are you competitive, Josie? Are you a stickler for the rules? Are we bending the rules? Are we trying to win? Are we just having a good time? What's your take on that?
I'm not, because I'm an only child, I've never competed with anyone for anything.
Okay.
So I'm the least competitive person. In fact, I will allow other people to win if I can tell that it really means a lot to them.
Will you? Okay.
I'm like the worst person. But in a team, I take a team game quite seriously, because
okay.
Then there's more, there's other people invested with me.
More at stake. Okay, I think that sounds healthy. That sounds very healthy.
There is actually a fun, thing. I kind of feel like if people can get away with stuff, it's part of the silly frivolity of game playing.
Good. Yeah, I'm on board with that, if pardon the pun. Okay, and I feel like that was a good last choice as well, because a bit like all of your choices, it's like a good thing. It's a happy thing for Action for Happiness. And yet, was it at all melancholy, like having a leave? I've never had a leaving do. Does it also feel a little bit sad in a way, or not?
It was sad. I'm glad that it was such a joy-filled evening, because otherwise I think I would have cried, especially because I was leaving one of my very closest friends.
Yeah.
It would have been, I would have cried if it hadn't been so laughter-fueled that just was a million miles from my consideration. The sadness of it didn't hit me until later, which is fine.
Yeah, no, I feel like that's sort of in keeping with the other choices. Josie, can I just say a humongous thank you for joining us today on Wonders of the World. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing about your choices. And
thank you so much. Thank you for asking me. I've really enjoyed, I've really enjoyed discussing them with you.
I'm off to find a heated blanket on the internet.
If you'd like to find out more about today's guest or the Wonders of the World podcast, then you can check out our website or get involved in all the usual social media nonsense. Wonders of the World is a borderline niche production. We would just like to say thank you for listening.